Today I wanted to do a chatty book tag video. This is the Where My Law Started book tag, which was created by Carrie over at Carrie Can Read. It's obviously inspired by the Instagram trend. It might be on TikTok, but I'm not on TikTok. The trend going around the bookish internet where you talk about, where your reading law started, or any kind of law, really, I imagine. Because I'm on Bookstagram, I've only seen the bookish stuff. It looked like quite a fun tag, so I just wanted to do a chatty video. The first question is, what is the first book that you remember reading by yourself? I can't remember what the first book would have actually been. I imagine it would have been like a Biff and Chip book from back in the day. I do remember reading a book called The Last Gold Digger. This was a really short children's book about a kid who I think receives letters from his granddad or his uncle or something, and that family member, whoever he's receiving letters from, is kind of going around the world and doing various things. So in this one he's in Australia, and I'm fairly sure this is what has kicked off my obsession, love for Australia. The book's only about 100 pages long. I had been thinking about it for years actually, and I couldn't remember the title, and then I came across it on Reddit and I picked up a copy because I am not letting that book out of my sight again. I am so happy that I have found it again. I may not ever reread it because I don't really feel the need to. It's definitely something that has stuck with me. Other than that, I read a book called Solo. I've also got a copy of this actually because, again, for the nostalgia, I would have read that when I was about 8 or 9. And it's literally the story of an African wild dog who is orphaned, and it's so sad, really emotional. And that was one of the first more advanced books I think I had picked up. The next question is, what character did you most identify with in elementary school? Definitely Mandy from the Animal Art books. I'm not sure if these were published in the US, but they were a massive deal in the UK. And I remember going to the bookshop or charity shop fairly often to try and find new books in this series. So I think the series was running for over 10 years. It started off in the 90s with a book called Kittens in the Kitchen, and it followed a girl called Mandy whose parents were vets, and she lived in this cute little English town. She would help out her parents and also animals in need. So this first one is about a stray cat who gives birth in a neighbour's kitchen, and I really liked this series. I used to want to be a vet when I was younger. I think now that was very unrealistic of me because I don't think I'd be able to handle the animals being unwell, let alone dying. But I did grow up wanting to help animals, be a vet, and so I was definitely identifying with her. The next question is, what was your elementary school comfort book? And I don't know how long elementary school lasts in the US, but I do remember reading Molly Moon when I was probably in the equivalent of elementary school. That was definitely a comforting book for me because it was about a orphaned girl called Molly who lived in an orphanage, and she was treated absolutely horribly, so it sounds a bit weird to call it a comfort book. She found a book of hypnotism and learned to hypnotize people. I found that quite comforting when I was younger and going through some really traumatic stuff, that maybe I could find something that could control the adults in my life and basically help me with what's going on. So I would probably say that one, obviously the Animal Art books as well. Harry Potter as well, I discovered that when I would have been about 9 years old, I think, and that definitely became a comfort read for me, reading about Harry going off to Hogwarts, particularly in the earlier books, meeting back up with his friends and just not worrying about what's going on at home with the Dursleys and getting away from them. The next question is, where or what was your safe space as a kid? And I'm not answering that because I didn't have one. The next question is, how has your taste in books changed since childhood? I would say it hasn't changed a lot in terms of the basics. So I still really enjoy really long series about following the same characters as they deal with the big task of the book, like the Lucy Daniels books. I really enjoy small town settings. I really enjoy reading about characters who live in small villages and towns who know all of their neighbours and just pop in for tea, or they're walking down the street and they bump into someone that they know. I really enjoy reading about stuff like that and close communities. I think that's kind of leaning into the cozy books that I enjoy reading, like cozy fantasy. I obviously really enjoyed fantasy books when I was younger. I think from the age of about 12, I started reading urban fantasy and paranormal romance, which arguably was a little bit early, but I don't think it really affected me in any negative way. It just made me more aware of things, if anything. And I still really do enjoy urban fantasy and paranormal to this day. Obviously, I went through the Twilight phase when I was probably 12 or 13. And I think that's the only thing that I would say has changed is how much I like romance in books. So I really enjoy reading paranormal romance and even some romance books, but I don't get obsessed with them, most of them, anymore, because I just don't care that much about the romance. I would much rather read about each character separately. So I'm less invested now, and nowadays I find a lot of sex scenes quite cringy or boring. There are very few authors that keep me entertained in the spicy scenes. Obviously I wasn't reading all this stuff when I was like a child, but I mean like early teens. All of this stuff was new to me, so I was so excited to be reading it, but nowadays I'm just like, seen it before. Next question is, did you feel inspired to read by your school? And if yes, how did your upbringing encourage reading? I guess there are two different questions here. First of all, did you feel inspired to read by your school? I did. I remember we had reading time at school, and then in year 5, when I would have been about 10, we had book projects, and I remember having to do a project on the book that I had been reading. I think it was Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. But school actually put me off reading somewhat. I don't know about American schools, but in the UK we used to have like banded reading, so we would have like red stickers, orange stickers, blue stickers for like the different reading levels. And I remember that I was stuck on one particular reading level, and my teachers were arguing with my mum that I couldn't go up a level because I wasn't reading out loud well enough. In fact, that wasn't even the reason. The reason was that I wasn't at that level yet, except I was reading these books at home. I was reading far more advanced books at home, but my issue was I didn't like reading out loud, because when I read out loud still, nowadays, I stumble over my words. My mouth cannot keep up with my brain as I'm reading. So when I was trying to read to the teacher to show that I was understanding and comprehending the words on the page, I couldn't get the words out and I stumbled over them, and they took that to mean that I wasn't ready to move up a band or go onto free reading. I think it was in particular about like going onto free reading and being able to read whatever I wanted. So I actually felt quite like set back by school. Another issue was that I am and was quite shy, so I didn't like being sat in the classroom reading out loud knowing that I stumbled over my words, because I found it embarrassing, even though I'm sure the other kids like weren't listening to me. They were busy doing their own stuff in the classroom, but I didn't want to be sat in the corner with the teacher doing the reading if I was going to stumble, especially because I think my friends probably knew that I wanted to get onto free reading and I wasn't, so even that put me off as well. So it was a whole thing, and then eventually I did get onto free reading after I read like a book perfectly well, and I'm fairly sure I like rehearsed it. So I don't really think I was inspired to read. I remember having some authors visit the school though, and they were sort of marketing their own books and telling us about writing and reading and stuff, and that was quite inspirational, I thought. And then the next part of this question is, how did your upbringing encourage reading? This is a really weird one for me because I can't actually remember why my parents, this could sound weird, but why my parents bought me so many books. It was my mum and my nan. They used to buy me tons of books, particularly my nan, when the like book trolley would come through her work. She's the one who bought me Harry Potter originally. She would get like book catalogues and stuff and order books for me. And I can't remember why they would do that, because neither of them read. And my brothers don't read, my sister doesn't read, my granddad still doesn't read, so I don't know where or why they encouraged me to read. I guess because I liked it so much. I must have discovered books somehow and then kept wanting more books. So I guess it was encouraging, it wasn't something that came natural to them, so it's always been a bit strange to me. But it's good that they were supportive, because now this has happened. I'm very grateful. The next question is, what book have you wanted to return to lately? I don't know if I've wanted to return to many childhood books, but I have been wanting to return to a lot of like old school YA books from when I was about 17. So that's when I first started Booktube, and I found a lot of favourites in those first couple of years, and I've kept a lot of them because they did mean so much to me, and I would really like to return to them because I do think I would still enjoy them. There have been a couple of instances where I haven't enjoyed the books upon a reread, and I've had to unhaul the hardbacks that I've had for like years, and that has been a real shame. But there are some books on my shelf that I would really like to go back to, like the Altered series by Jennifer Rush and Unravelling by Elizabeth Morris. I really enjoyed those books and I'd like to go back to them. There are a lot of like fantasy or sci-fi books that I would really like to go back to. I'd also really like to reread the Saga of Darren Shan. I loved those books when I was younger. I think I read the first book because it was donated to me by the local indie bookshop. I didn't know it was indie at the time, obviously it was just, you know, the village bookshop, and it has unfortunately since closed down, but they donated it because it was meant to go into like a school raffle or something, and me being really disorganized, I just didn't give it to them. So I read this book randomly and I loved it, so I'd like to go back to this Saga of Darren Shan. I also a few years ago started rereading the Princess Diaries and also the It Girl series, and I'd like to carry on with those. Princess Diaries I think I'm on book 8 of, and then the It Girl I've only read one more book, but I really enjoyed those. I enjoyed the It Girl more than Gossip Girl. Those were a lot of fun. The next question is, what is your favourite or formative YA series? Formative would definitely be Twilight, of course. I read it and then I made all of my friends read it because I had heard about the hype, and I really liked the covers. I'm sure the covers had a lot to do with how popular this book series was, because I remember seeing them in WH Smith and absolutely loving them. I don't know what they did to those covers, but the cover artist was doing something right. So I would say, while it's not a favourite YA series, it's definitely formative. And then there's also like The Forest of Hands and Teeth, which I read back in my first days of Booktube. I think I would like that one more now if I were to read it than I did back then, but that's like a zombie horror dystopian sort of series. There's also The Maze Runner. I read the first one of those and really liked it. I never carried on with the series though, so I guess that's kind of formative for me. And then there are also books like Before I Fall by Lauren Oliver. That's from my first year of Booktube, and I really loved that one. That was like a speculative contemporary book. Choker as well by Elizabeth Wood, or Woods, I can't remember her surname. That was a YA thriller with a massive twist as well. A twist that I would probably see coming today, but I didn't so much then. So that would fit this question because, again, I really enjoy twisty, thrillery books. The next question is a book you had to read in school but you loved. I'm trying to think back to primary school where we had assigned reading, but I cannot remember any of the books. I think we had to read a lot of Michael Morpurgo. One of them was Kensuke's Kingdom, and I remember enjoying that, I think. But most of the assigned reading that I can remember was in secondary school, and I remember being really surprised by Othello, which I know isn't like technically a book, it's a play, but I previously hadn't enjoyed any Shakespeare apart from this one. I don't know if it's the way that the teacher was reading it to us and interacting with us, or having us interact with the text, but previously I've hated Shakespeare, but this one I did really quite enjoy. We also had to read The Great Gatsby for that class, and I enjoyed that as well, but I think Othello was the standout there. Next question is your weirdest favourite book. Is that meant to be from before or from now? I don't know if I have any like weird favourites. I guess Solo would count as quite weird because it's not really what you would expect from me, in that it's like a non-fiction book that I read when I would have been like 8 years old. Randomly, because I am interested in African wild dogs. The next question is, if your 13-year-old self could live in a fictional world, which would it be, and is it different from the world you'd choose now? I definitely would have chosen Harry Potter. I don't think I would choose it now because it just seems quite depressing, and also, obviously the wizards don't believe or don't know about human science, and the human world, now that I know so much about it and I'm older, I am really interested in like how that's progressing and technology, whereas if I were to move to the wizarding world now, I would lose a lot of that. So yeah, I wouldn't choose it now. I don't know what I would choose now. I'm actually quite happy here. Well, happy is, you know, an interesting word to use considering the current goings on, but basically I don't want to move to another world. And the last question is there a newly released book you wish you had when you were younger? Yes, I wish I had had Hannah Gould's books. They're middle grade books that I still really enjoy, but I think younger me would have really liked them as well. And I think introducing younger me to the climate crisis sooner could only have had a positive effect, I think. I don't know, maybe it would have made me more depressed, but I think it probably would have been a good thing. So I definitely wish Hannah Gould's books were around when I was younger. I also think I would have really enjoyed reading Holly Jackson's books, A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, because they are set in my county where I live, and they mention all of the places that I knew about when I was younger and visited and lived in. So I think younger me would have really enjoyed that, because there were very few, I can't even think of any books that were set in Buckinghamshire when I was young. I would have had so much fun with them. I'm having loads of fun with them now still after several rereads. Younger me would have really enjoyed those. And with that, that's the end of the tag. I don't know if that was enjoyable or not. If you want to, you could answer the questions in the comments down below. I would love to know your answers to them. Or if you are doing this tag yourself, then also let me know so I can come and visit your video. And with that, I'm gonna go now and grab something to eat. So thank you for watching. I'll speak to you all in the next video. Bye.